Hi, I'm Dan Schmidt, and I do a weekly television show called Team Chicago Challenge. It's a motorcycle racing show. I'm also doing these political comments, putting them up on YouTube so I can teach the general public. I was the candidate for Congress in the 5th Congressional District in 2012. I did not win that race. I didn't raise enough money to put on a very active campaign. I did go to a lot of street fairs. I did shake a lot of hands. I did meet hundreds of people. And the one thing that shocked me about meeting all these different people is that most people have very little knowledge of history, even simple history about Chicago. Well, not that I'm that old, but I am old enough to remember the good old days when there was real jobs, there was real work, there was manufacturing. In fact, you know, in the 1970s, Chicago was the #1, was the electronics center of the world right here in Chicago. That's a fact. In fact, there was over 400,000 manufacturing jobs just in the city of Chicago. People wanted to work, there was plenty of work. Now you drive around the city of Chicago, and there's vacant lots, vacant areas. I don't know if the figure is 17,000 vacant lots or 170,000 vacant lots in Chicago. What has kept Chicago going, though, after all these businesses were driven out, and that's what I gave a speech recently. In fact, I was the guest of Lynn Franco, had a candidates get-together at Daley Park on the south side of Chicago. She asked me to be the keynote speaker, and I got to talk about how things used to be in Chicago and what happened and what caused these businesses to leave. And I'll tell you what it is. It is politics. When you put idiots, when you put morons, when you elect goofballs, and you make them the mayor, you put them in the city council, evil things will happen. And in 1974, the most evil thing could happen happened in the city of Chicago. So let's go watch my speech. I'm thankful to Lynn for inviting me to be keynote speaker at this candidates forum in Daley Park in the south side of Chicago in the wonderful Chesterfield district. Nice neighborhood, nice park, nice Spanish motif in the park. So listen to my speech, and after the speech, I'll give you a little conclusion.
I'm Dan Schmidt. I was the candidate for Congress in the 5th Congressional District the last go-around. I didn't raise enough money. I didn't win the election. But I did go to all the street fairs in the 5th Congressional District. And one thing I learned is the majority, people, college-educated people, smart people, know nothing of the history, know very little of what's been going on. So I'm going to ask a couple questions. How many people here remember work? How many people here remember factories in your neighborhood? How many people here remember when mom or dad or auntie or your big brother walked down the street and he had a great job? How many people remember you could just walk out on the street and there was a job on every single corner in the city of Chicago? Well, what happened? Well, how many people here have rode the IC train downtown? Anybody ever taken the IC and worked downtown? Anybody works downtown? Okay. Well, let's talk about some of the companies that people work for. How about Donnelly Press? It's a big building, a lot of computers in there now. They are using the building, but at one time, they were making money. They were printing the yellow pages for the entire country right there on 22nd Street and Lakeshore Drive with hundreds of employees with great jobs, making a living, black, white, Hispanic, didn't make a difference. If you could do the job, you had a job. There was one company, gone. Where? They're gone, another state. Let's talk about Wisconsin Steel. How many people remember Wisconsin Steel? Blast furnaces. If you lived on Avenue O, you didn't even need lights in your garage because the blast furnace across the canal would light up your whole backyard. Great jobs. Everybody made money. U.S. Steel. Where'd they all go? Well, if you listen to the goofballs on ABC, NBC, the Chicago Tribune, you know, the so-called smart reporters, they have for the last 20 years been putting across this idea that these evil business owners left America. They're looking for cheaper labor. That's not the truth. They were thrown out of America. They were thrown out of Chicago. And the so-called smart people at the University of Illinois, in fact, I just heard one the other day, and he said, well, we don't need manufacturing. We'll handle the money of the world. They're still saying it 20 years later. How has that worked out for you? How has that worked out for you? We're handling the money. You got a couple million in your pocket? Maybe Round Man, he might be making out pretty good handling the money of America, but the average person is not working. The wealth of this nation is based on manufacturing. Get this in your head. I want every single one of you to understand this. This is the key. Manufacturing. To take raw material, to take iron ore out of Michigan or Minnesota, to run it over to the steel mill and turn it into steel, to take petroleum from Canada, but President Obama doesn't want the pipeline, and turn it into plastic, turn it into stuff. I mean, what do you have in your house? Refrigerators, air conditioners, it's all made. People make things, great jobs. And how many people, when they leave their job at the end of the day, in a manufacturing job, take great enjoyment of what they did that day? At the end of the day, they can walk down the end of the line and go, this is great, we made this. This came out of us. No, it's all evil. And how was this stolen from us? Well, let me read this. In 1974, the goofball, the greedy, and the dumb mayor of Chicago decided to penalize the manufacturers in Chicago with a tax. The most evil tax ever conceived. He wanted to punish manufacturers for hiring people. Do you know how terrible that sounds? In other words, you've got employees, you're going to pay tax for having employees. You have given people a great living, you've given people a home, you've given them an income, and I'm still going to tax you. I was there. I witnessed it. I was Coffee Dan back then. Zenith was my lunch stop. Zenith, I used to go there lunchtime with my coffee truck at Dickens in Austin. 5,000 employees in that plant. Go by that plant now. It's a rundown old building. There was 5,000 great jobs right there. And they had 4 other plants. Zenith had 15,000 manufacturing jobs in Chicago in 1970. Motorola, 8,000 jobs on Costner and Augusta Boulevard. 8,000 jobs, great jobs that people had in the city of Chicago. Look around. How many more companies? Floorshine Shoes, S&W Instruments, Skillsaw. How many people in my neighborhood, right there in Mayfair, right there in Jefferson Park, had a great job working at Skillsaw, right there on Elston Avenue? Gone. Jobs are gone. Richard J. Daley and the Democratic Party of the city of Chicago, of the county of Cook, declared war on the working class people in Chicago, in Cook County, and they drove these jobs out of Chicago. And look around your neighborhood. What is the statistic? Is there 15,000 vacant lots in Chicago? Or is it 150,000 vacant lots? And people look around and they're like, would these people move out? No, you know what? There was factories in them vacant lots. There are people working in them vacant lots. So what is your determination of what is insanity? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. And the people in Chicago have been voting for these morons, these idiots, for the last 20 or 30 years. They go in there, I vote Democratic, I vote Democratic. It's like, they're crazy. Don't they wake up? Don't they look out? Don't they see the whole city has been collapsed? You know how great Illinois, does anybody have an idea how great Illinois is? Has anybody traveled the entire state? Have you been down to Cairo? Or you've been over to Metropolis and seen Superman? How many people have been down there, huh? You probably don't even know what I'm talking about, but there's a statue of Superman down in Metropolis. So think about how great this state of Illinois is, and we could easily balance our budget. We have to bring back manufacturing. That's why it's so critically important that the Republican Party, that the Republicans across the board, state rep candidates, understand we need to bring back real manufacturing to Chicago. And I don't believe in make work like the old Soviet Union. We need real jobs, real people, and we need to hold up business leaders with respect. Not the same people, you hear them. We need jobs, right? And yet they demonize every business owner in the country. The president, every day of the week, he disobeys the 10th commandment. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods. And that's all he ever talks about, is coveting his neighbor's goods. So I hope everybody get out the enthusiasm. We need people to get out and vote and start looking at the Republican Party again. We got some great candidates. I'm so lucky the Republicans in Cook County have organized, got real candidates running real districts, Lynn and all the rest of you. And this is it. We're going to turn Chicago around. We're going to turn Illinois around. We need real candidates with real issues. Thank you.
Well, that was it. Richard J. Daley, a moron. That's right. A guy that it's unbelievable, just totally unbelievable what a bad mayor he was. And I'm happy that Lynn invited me for the speech. And you know, I talked to a Republican candidate for state rep, and I told him about this head tax. And he started, let's see, Zenith had 15,000. He started figuring out the money. And I said, stop it. Stop figuring out the money. If you cannot understand how evil it is to tax a company for hiring people. These companies were paying thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in property tax. These companies were paying thousands and thousands of dollars when you figure out all the sales tax of all the employees buying food, traveling to and from work. Believe me, thousands and thousands of dollars were generated when we had these great factories. And it took a goofball like Richard J. Daley. And I'm going to go back and check and see how the columnists, someone like Mike Reiko, and I sort of remember Mike Reiko was for it. This is all part of the Democratic Party demonizing business owners in this country, in Cook County, in the city of Chicago for the last 30, 40, 50 years. They have devastated the Democratic Party of Cook County, the Democratic Party of the state of Illinois, and the National Democratic Party under the leadership of Barack Obama. Think about it. What has President Obama done to encourage anybody to get into business? No, it's all evil. Now, Chicago, we have benefited because we have this wonderful lakefront, and the real estate for people to live. Living in Chicago is pleasant. There's many great neighborhoods. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of money being generated by the property tax. But just think how much less your property tax would be if you had factories that were also paying property tax. You know, Chicago right now under Rahm Emanuel, the brother of that goofball Ezekiel, Rahm Emanuel, right now, under his leadership, the debt in Chicago is greater than the debt in Detroit. But because we do have people that do love Chicago, we do have this lakefront. We do have Lake Michigan, somewhere where you can go swim. You don't have to worry about any strange animals coming and eating you, where you are safe 99.99% of the time. Going into Lake Michigan is pretty safe. No jellyfish that will sting you and kill you. No stingrays that you'll step on a stingray and will paralyze you. No, we're very lucky. Lake Michigan is a beautiful facility, and thanks to the foresight back in the 1890s of those leaders in Chicago that preserved the lakefront for us, the residents. But that's a whole other story. But thanks again to Lynn Franco. She's the candidate in the 33rd District. She'll be on the ballot coming in November. And remember, all you people living in that 33rd District, there's nobody better you could vote for than Lynn Franco, because she understands we need to bring vocational training back into high school. You want to know why 50% of kids drop out of school? Because it's boring. Start teaching these kids something. Teach them how to work with their hands. Teach them Teach them how to create things, how to make things. Back in the good old days, they had foundries in the high schools. They had machine shops. They had wood shops. They taught people how to make something. We need to be a country to make stuff again. Manufacturing is the key. I got to go. That's been enough time. And thanks for tuning in. Remember, TeamChicago.tv is my motorcycle shop, motorcycle website. WalkWithDan.com is the political website. My email is teamdan45@gmail.com. Send me a line. And if any of you so-called smart people want to debate me, I'm willing to debate you anywhere, anytime, any place.